Before I continue, let me remind you where we are. My husband, Michael, returned after 41 years of absence. At first, I thought it was a miracle, but soon I uncovered letters, a second family, and the truth about a woman named Rose, his partner in those missing years, who had died under suspicious circumstances. The police once suspected him, and then a stranger appeared at my door, warning, "He can't run forever." I realized then his return wasn't about me or about love. It was about hiding from something far darker. That night, I could barely breathe in the same house with him. Every creak of the floor, every shadow cast by the firelight felt like a threat. He sat silently in his chair, staring into the flames, his face tight with thoughts he refused to share. I wanted to scream at him, demand the truth, force him to confess everything. But instead I whispered, "Why did you really come back?" He turned his head slowly, his eyes meeting mine. For the first time since his return, I saw no shame, no regret, only fear. "I had nowhere else," he said, "and I thought, maybe you'd still care for me." Care for him? After he had torn my life apart? My hands clenched in my lap, but I stayed silent because I knew he was still holding something back. The next day I went into town. I carried one of the letters I had found, tucked into my coat pocket. At the library, I asked the clerk about Rose, about her family. At first, the woman behind the desk was reluctant, but when she saw the name, her expression darkened. "People here still talk about her," she whispered. "They say her death was no accident. Some think Michael had something to do with it, but there was never enough proof." Her words hit me like a stone. Proof or not, suspicion was enough to poison my soul. "Do you know her children?" I asked. The woman nodded. "Yes. They moved away after she died, but they said he ruined their lives. They hated him." I walked back home slowly, the snow crunching under my boots, each step heavier than the last. If even Rose's children despised him, then what kind of man had I spent my youth waiting for? When I returned, Michael was sitting at the table, his bag on the floor beside him. He looked up quickly, as if he had been waiting. "Where were you?" he asked, his voice sharp. "In town," I answered evenly. His eyes narrowed. "Talking about me?" I didn't respond. Instead, I placed the letter on the table between us. "I know enough now, enough to see that you're not the man I once loved." His face hardened. "You don't understand, Anna. Everything I did, I had no choice. Life pushed me down paths I never wanted." "No," I whispered, tears burning my eyes. "You made choices, Michael. You chose to leave. You chose her. And now you've chosen to hide here, with me, as though I am nothing but a shelter from the storm you created." He stood suddenly, slamming his fist on the table. The cups rattled, the sound sharp in the quiet house. "Don't speak to me like that. You don't know what I've been through." I flinched, my heart pounding. For the first time, I truly feared him. Not just his lies, not just his secrets, but the anger that boiled inside him. And in that moment, I understood. I was no longer his wife, nor his refuge. I was simply the last place left for him to run. My dear listeners, I must ask you again, If you were in my place, what would you do? Could you live another day with such a man under your roof? Or would you find the strength to cast him out, even if it meant facing the truth alone? Please write your thoughts in the comments. I read them all, and your voices matter more than you know, because the story does not end here. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I would uncover the final truth. Whether it proved Michael guilty, or whether it showed me a darkness I never wanted to see. And what I found was worse than anything I had feared. That night, after his outburst at the table, I lay awake in bed, my body trembling. I could hear him pacing again, his footsteps moving across the creaky floorboards of the living room. Every step reminded me this was not the man I had loved. This was someone else, a stranger who carried shadows too heavy for me to bear. I knew then I could no longer sit in silence. I had to know the truth, even if it shattered me completely. When morning came, I rose early. Michael was still asleep in the chair by the fire, his head leaning against his hand, his bag tucked safely at his side. Quietly, I slipped it away and carried it to the kitchen. Inside, beneath letters and old clothes, I found something I had not seen before, a small black notebook. The leather was cracked, the pages yellowed at the edges. My hand shook as I opened it. The words inside were his handwriting, messy, hurried. But what I read froze my blood. He had written about Rose, about their fights, their bitterness, his resentment of the life he had built with her. But worse, he had written of his desire to leave her, to end it once and for all. One entry in particular left me cold. She said she'd expose me. She said she'd tell them everything. I can't let that happen. One way or another, it has to stop. My breath caught in my throat. The page blurred as tears filled my eyes. It wasn't proof in a court of law, perhaps, but for me, it was enough. Michael hadn't simply lost Rose. He had wanted her gone. I heard a sound behind me. I turned quickly, clutching the notebook to my chest. Michael stood in the doorway, his face pale, his eyes locked on what I held. "Give that to me," he said quietly. I shook my head. "No, I've read it. I know what you've done." His jaw tightened. "You don't understand." "Don't I?" My voice cracked, rising with years of buried rage. "For 41 years I wept for you. I believed you were dead. I raised our children alone. And all that time, you were building another life, writing in this book about how much you hated it. And now she's gone, suspiciously gone. And you think you can come here and hide?" His eyes darkened. "I didn't kill her, Anna. I only thought about it. I was desperate. But when she died, I saw my chance to escape." I nearly collapsed against the chair. The words cut me deeper than any blade. He hadn't killed her, perhaps, but he had wished for it, written about it, carried the thought in his heart until fate, or something else, had finished the act for him. "I don't know you anymore," I whispered. He stepped closer, his voice trembling. "I came back because you're the only one who ever truly loved me. You're all I have left." But I saw it now, clearly, painfully. He hadn't come back for love. He had come back because he had no one else, because guilt, fear, and suspicion had driven him to my door. I was his last refuge, nothing more. That evening, I sat alone, staring at the notebook, the fire flickering low beside me. I thought of my children, of the grandchildren who visited with laughter and light. I thought of the girl I once was, the woman who had believed in love so fiercely that she had waited 4 decades for a ghost. And then I thought of Michael, sleeping in the other room, a man consumed by his own choices, his own darkness. I knew then I had to choose. Keep his secret, protect him, let him stay, or finally let go of the man who had destroyed so much of my life. My dear listeners, I turn to you once again. If you found a notebook like this, written by the man you once loved, filled with thoughts of hatred, fear, and escape, what would you do? Could you forgive? Or would you see it for what it was? Proof that love had long ago rotted into something unrecognizable. Tell me in the comments. I read them all, and I need your voices now more than ever. Because the choice I made in the days that followed did not just change my life, it changed Michael's too. And it was the final act in a story that had begun 41 years ago, when he first walked away from me. The days after I discovered Michael's notebook passed in a blur. Each time I looked at him, sitting by the fire or walking across the yard, I saw not my husband, not the man I had once loved, but a stranger who had lived a life I could never forgive. I remembered the girl I had been when he left, young, hopeful, clinging to the belief that love could survive anything. And then I remembered the woman I became, working, struggling, raising children alone, while neighbors whispered behind my back. Now I saw it clearly. I had carried him like a ghost on my shoulders for 41 years, only to learn he had been alive all along, living in someone else's arms. And now he sat here, in my house, asking me to protect him from the consequences of his own sins. One evening, I gathered the courage to speak. "I found your notebook," I told him. "I read every word. You can deny it all you want, but I know the truth now." His eyes widened. He looked smaller somehow, weaker, as if the years had finally caught him. "Anna," he whispered, "don't tell anyone. Please, I only wrote those things. I never acted on them." I clenched my fists. "You wanted her gone. You dreamed of her death. And when it came, you ran. And now you've run back to me, not because you love me, but because you're afraid." He reached for my hand across the table. I pulled back. "You were all I ever had," he said desperately. "You think I don't regret it? Every day I thought of you. But I couldn't come back. I was trapped." I shook my head, tears blurring my vision. "No, you weren't trapped. You chose. You chose to stay with her. You chose to abandon me. And now you've chosen to make me carry your secrets." That night, I made my decision. The next morning, I called my daughter. I told her everything. The letters, the notebook, the stranger at the door. She listened in silence, and then she said firmly, "Mama, it's time. He can't stay with you. He'll only drag you down further. Let him face what he's done." I hung up, my heart heavy. I knew she was right. When Michael returned from the shed later that day, I was waiting at the table with his bag beside me. "You have to leave," I said simply. His face went pale. "Leave? Where will I go?" I held his gaze. "That is not my concern. You came here to hide, not to love. I cannot carry your sins, not anymore." He stepped forward, his voice shaking. "Anna, please, don't send me away. You're all I have left." I swallowed hard. "No, Michael. You had me once, and you let me go. Whatever comes for you now, it is not mine to bear." The silence was unbearable. He stood there, his eyes wide, his chest rising and falling, as though each breath was a struggle. For a moment I thought he might beg again, but then, slowly, he lowered his head, picked up his bag, and walked to the door. I watched him step out into the snow, his figure shrinking in the distance. My chest ached with grief, but beneath it, there was something else, a strange, fragile sense of freedom. That evening, as I sat by the fire, I thought of all the years I had lost waiting for him. I thought of the tears, the loneliness, the shame, and I realized something powerful. Love, once broken and betrayed, can never truly be restored. I would not spend the rest of my days in his shadow. I would live for myself now, for the woman who had survived without him, for the children I had raised alone, for the strength I had discovered in the silence he left behind. My dear listeners, I must ask you, if it were you, would you have let him go? Or would you have held on to the ghost of the man you once loved, even knowing the truth of his betrayal? Write your thoughts in the comments. I read every word, and your voices guide me more than you know. But this story does not end with his leaving, because in the days that followed, I learned something more, something that confirmed my decision forever. Michael's past had finally caught up with him, and when I heard what happened, I knew. I had been right to let him go. The morning after Michael left, the house felt unbearably quiet. For the first time in weeks, I could hear the wind moving softly against the windows, the ticking of the clock without interruption. His absence was a weight lifted, but it also left behind an emptiness that hurt more than I had expected. I made tea and sat by the fire, staring at the chair where he had slept so many nights. Part of me still searched for his shape in the shadows, still listened for his footsteps. But another part, the stronger part, knew I had done the right thing. I had survived 41 years without him. I could survive the rest of my days too. 3 days later, the phone rang. It was a voice I didn't recognize, low and steady. "Is this Anna?" "Yes," I said cautiously. There was a pause then. "This is the police. We thought you should know. Michael has been taken into custody." My throat tightened. "Why?" The officer's words were heavy. "He was found near Rose's old home. The investigation into her death was reopened. New evidence has come to light, and he's under suspicion again." I sank into the chair, my hand gripping the phone so tightly it hurt. Will he be convicted?" I whispered. "We can't say yet, but it seems he's been running from this for a long time. His past finally caught up with him." When I hung up the phone, I sat in silence for a long time. I thought of the stranger who had knocked at my door, saying he can't run forever. I thought of the notebook filled with his confessions, his resentment, his desperate words, and I thought of the man who had once held me close, promising me a life of love and safety before vanishing into the shadows of his own choices. In that moment, I understood. The man I had loved died the day he walked away from me 41 years ago. The man who returned was not my husband. He was only the ghost of what I once believed in. That evening, I went through the letters one last time. I folded them carefully, placed them in a box, and locked it away in the attic. Not because I wanted to preserve them, but because I needed them out of sight. The past belonged there, in the dust, in the dark, no longer haunting the present. When I closed the attic door, I felt something I had not felt in years: peace. Now I live quietly. I spend my days with my children, my grandchildren, watching them laugh and grow. They are the true legacy of my life, not the pain of abandonment, not the shadow of betrayal, but the strength that carried me through decades of sorrow. Michael's story ended the way it was always meant to, consumed by the lies he created. But mine continues, free, unbroken, and stronger than ever. My dear listeners, this is the end of my story, but I want to ask you one last time, what would you have done? Could you have let him go after 41 years of waiting? Or would you have clung to him, even knowing the truth? Please share your thoughts in the comments. I want to know where you stand, because stories like mine are not just about the past. They are warnings, reminders of the choices we make and of the strength we can find when we are forced to stand alone. And if you've listened until the end, thank you. Your presence, your voices, your hearts, they mean more to me than you'll ever know. This has been my story, a story of love, loss, betrayal, and survival. A story of a woman who waited and who finally learned that some ghosts should never be welcomed home.